Speaking of Bubba, let's hear from him right now.
Takes a lot of grit, a lot of determination from the get-go. You know, I said we were better than 16th, proving that. Can't get complacent though. I can still wind up 16th. Got to keep fighting. So, man, just so proud of this group. So proud of myself. Proud of everybody involved, and making around to 12. I think I'm gonna give me some shoes like my man Jordan here. So I'm excited.
You know, I know running around Bristol for 500 laps can sometimes do a number on you, but I want to remind Bubba he can't finish 16th anymore. You can only go as far as 12th now, buddy. So you're doing better. But yeah, you could just hear the relief in his voice, and you know, talking a lot about Denny and how he embraces the haters. You know, Bubba has haters of his own too, and you could kind of tell that he's like, look at me. You know, I've done it. I've moved on to the next round. A lot of people said I couldn't do it. Here I am. And I think that's huge motivation for him and his team.
Brad, they wanted to make the playoffs. That was the first box. But to make the second round, I think this got to be a really good year for that team. Even though they haven't notched a W, for him to be in the final 12, that's a win.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if they want to continue to advance, they need to win because, again, what they did on Saturday night was very impressive to make it into the round of 12. They were 19 points below the cut line, and they came in at +4. That's a big jump, and obviously that was helped by Joey Logano wrecking, but it doesn't matter. It was a race, and they were in it, and they did a great job. But they're back to 0. They have 0 playoff points, and every round that they go, they're going to go back to 0 playoff points. And if they don't make the championship round, they go back to 0 playoff points and everything that they gained throughout the playoffs. So they have a lot of work to do. I feel like they have to win, and I feel like especially in this round, they need to make something big happen at Texas, which they can do. Toyotas are great on intermediate tracks. They've got to make something big happen at Talladega. He is actually well above average when it comes to people running on speedway races and really thrives out front. If they don't do well in those 2 races, guess what we're going to be talking about when it comes to the Roval? Bubba's road course record. He's been decent this year, but can you be decent in the round of 12 in advance?
Decent's not going to cut it as far as advancing to the playoffs. We don't normally talk about Xfinity races on here because we have so much NASCAR Cup Series news. They had an Xfinity race at Bristol on Friday night. Dale Earnhardt Jr. got out and led a few laps. Brad Gilley, Mark Garrow, Rob Albright were having a lot of fun talking about Jr. in the lead. And when it was all over, he said he just loves to be competitive.
If you aim low, you'll never be disappointed. So I don't set high expectations, especially at this point in my life, except for, you know, certain things. But when it comes to racing, I try not to really get too competitive because when I get competitive, I get miserable, even when I'm running well. These races for me are about just coming back and smelling the smells and hearing the sounds and getting reminded what's going on inside the car and what a driver thinks about. I feel like that the further I get removed from my driving career, the harder it is to be a broadcaster and an analyst. And so running these races is all about learning and reminding yourself of what a driver thinks and goes through at certain situations. So that stuff's fresh on your mind.
Alexis, he had the crowd on their feet.
He certainly did. I mean, look, anytime Dale Jr. shows up anywhere, there's going to be people that are excited, you know, for what's happening. But he, you know, he's done several of these races since he has retired from full-time Cup Series racing, and he's always run kind of decent. Leading laps at Bristol was a big deal. Obviously, his car then ended up in victory lane with Justin Allgaier winning, so he got to, you know, get a ride from pit road into victory lane, you know, through Justin's window. A cool night for him, a cool night for Junior Motorsports. But I think he's so smart in that, you know, obviously he does it for fun because it's something he likes to do, but being able to tie that back into what he can give audiences on Saturday and Sundays when he's in the booth is invaluable.
Brad, how much fun was that for you to talk about Dale Earnhardt Jr. leading a race until his car caught on fire and he had to park it?
Yeah, look, it's pretty awesome to be able to say Dale Earnhardt Jr. takes the lead, and to say it at Bristol, which is even more cool. It was just, you could almost see the fun he was having in the car, and even before the race, he was talking about the same expectations. You know, hope to not go out there and embarrass myself and all of that. Boy, they took the lead, and he was going to fight for it until the end, until that fire. The other thing that I thought was great about it is after the race, he was like, look, I'm going to come back and do 1 or 2 of these a year. Well, I'm going to try and get Jeff Burton back in the car. And I talked to Jeff Gordon. I want to try and get him back in the car for an Xfinity race. I hope that whatever race Dale Jr. runs next year, it's at Bristol. So that was cool to watch.
I think he's going to run one more race this year, too, right? He's going to run Homestead, isn't he? I'm pretty sure.
I think you're right. I was thinking there was one or two, but
Yeah.
that'd be pretty awesome.
Well,
yeah.
if he keeps doing well, that number may creep up. A lot of big news in the NASCAR world over this past week. Alexis, a lot of it has to do with the speedways.
Yeah, there's been, obviously we do not have a schedule yet for 2024. We're still waiting on that to come out, but there has been little bits that have kind of trickled out for the fans. One, this past weekend at Bristol, they announced that we will no longer be racing on dirt in the spring. So the spring date and the fall date will both be on concrete in 2024, which if you could tell from some of the drivers' comments, had them happy about that news. The LA Coliseum is going to be back again in 2024. Not only is it going to have the Cup Series, but it's going to have a companion race with the NASCAR Mexico Series. So that should be pretty interesting to watch. And then I haven't seen any formal announcements on this, but I believe Road America has announced that they will not be on the NASCAR schedule at all in 2024, which I know a lot of people really love that track and that facility. And so that's got a few people bummed out.
Brad Gilly, on the driver's side, Colleague Racing has finally pinned one of their Cup drivers for next year.
Yeah, Daniel Hemrick, former Xfinity Series champion, is going to move up. Justin Haley had announced his exit from the organization to go to Rick Ware next year. And Daniel Hemrick is the driver that they've actually tapped to drive that number 31 car. Colleague Racing, there's a lot of things going on there right now because there's nothing truly been said about A.J. Allmendinger and in which series he's going to race. Allmendinger has said, I'll be back with Colleague, but I might not want to do the Cup thing full time again, especially now that he and his wife Tara are new parents. So we'll see what happens there, but I think that's pretty interesting. Chris Rice talked a lot about, hey, look, a lot of people deserve second chances, and we feel Daniel Hemrick deserves a second chance to be able to run in Cup. I think a lot of people also feel that Daniel Hemrick also needs to get back to victory lane because in the one race that he's won, it was a big one. It won him a championship, but he only led about the last 100 feet of that. So I think a lot of people are hoping for more out of that team next year, but we'll see how it goes.
And in other news, this one's kind of a Rubik's Cube, so bear with me here. It was announced that Live Fast Motorsports has sold their charter to Spire Motorsports. The charter's kind of like having a franchise, so they've sold that for a reported $37 million to Spire. Quickly after that, Trackhouse Racing announced that they are going to get Truck Series champion Zane Smith to drive full-time for them. But they will be working for Trackhouse, but in a Spire Motorsports third car next year. So you got all that. The car's owned by Spire, but he is racing for Trackhouse. So that's pretty big news. And Trackhouse has also signed Shane Van Gisbergen to a contract where he will run a myriad of different races, Cup races, Xfinity, truck, late model. So a lot going on there, and we'll see how all of this. We'll have a lot more time to talk about this as we get to next year, but still, finally, the final few pieces of silly season being put to bed.